And how would you describe the situation now in broader terms?
Well, you're talking about sort of global. Well, I think there are a lot of challenges. I mean, there are obviously the challenges around populism, inequality within countries, inequality between countries, climate change. Probably the biggest international issue is the G2 spat, the argument, the Cold War that now exists between, I think it does exist between the United States and China. And then, of course, and then there's cyber terrorism. But, obviously the big short to medium term issue is the pandemic. And the pandemic does not seem now that we will be out of this until, say, midway through next year, when we have a vaccine that's been tested, has gone through phase 3, that has been distributed, and people have been vaccinated. Obviously, COVID-19 has accelerated digital transformation at a consumer level. 1/3 of US consumers are buying essentials and groceries online. We're educating our kids online. We're communicating online. We're having our financial services online. We're having our insurance online. So obviously that's one level. Media, as you know, the acceleration of digital transformation amongst the media has made it more and more difficult for newspapers and magazines, more and more difficult for free-to-air television, as the streamers like Netflix and Disney Plus grow and grow. So that's the media too. Online digital outdoor does well, but classical outdoor still suffers. And then lastly, and most importantly, enterprises that perhaps before COVID-19 were hesitant to transform because they were growing at, say, 2 or 3 or 4%. They cut their costs, they bought back stock, they grew their earnings by 5 to 10%. That was a good sort of modus operandi or status quo. But when COVID-19 hit, as you see with the earnings that are being reported in Q2, it's a bloodbath. Banks are down by 50%. I mean, they heavily provision their results. If I look at S4, which is now valued by the stock market at well over $2 billion, about $2.3 billion, and about 1.8 billion pounds. We've grown very strongly, even during COVID. I mean, our top line is up on a pro forma basis about 14% in the first 5 months of the year, and June has proven to be stronger. So we're doing extremely well, even in COVID. And we announced a deal around an Amazon agency, Orca, just a few minutes ago.
Yes.
So we're doing very well. But I think for us, we're well positioned. Purely digital, the Holy Trinity, as you know, faster, better, cheaper, and a unitary structure. That's a very good positioning. But the challenges that most businesses are going through, particularly the analog businesses, and you see it in the media industry, are very profound, and they've been accelerated by COVID-19. So net, it's a very difficult environment.
And you've been merging, not acquiring, but if I'm correct, merging companies and
yes,
having companies buy into the S4 idea. The last one was merging Mighty Hive with Digodat. And are you going to continue this trend? Is this a trend for S4?
Well, since Digodat, we've done Lens 10.
All right.
Which is also into Mighty Hive, and then this afternoon Orca into Mighty Hive as well. So the answer, yes, we've done. We had our original Media Monks and Mighty Hive, so content practice and data and analytics and programmatic. And we've added 6 companies now, as of today, 6 companies to Media Monks, and 6, Circus and Firewood, for example. And then we've added 6 companies to Mighty Hive. So very exciting.
many companies have high financial pressure. Their P&Ls are not closing. They have to cut A&P, ad spending. And this was a great excuse to make them look good, be part of a cause, and go through significant cuts. Am I wrong, correct? What do you think about it?
I think there were people who did it because they believed it was the right thing to do. I think what you say is a somewhat cynical point of view. There might have been some people who were what they call virtue signaling. They were jumping on the bandwagon. But no, I think a number of people. But the question really is, Patricio, is whether that's the right way to do it. Just like when you're dealing with the Chinese, you're advised always, if you have a different, not to do it in public, but because of loss of face, you should talk to them privately. I think the boycott is relatively ineffective in the sense that the people who feel strongly about this, quite rightly, they don't like hate speech, they don't want racism online, and they want to get rid of this venal material. But the way to do it, I think, is to engage with Facebook and say this is what they should do. And a threat is only good if it is not exercised. Once the threat is exercised, it loses all power. So I just don't think it gets you anywhere at the end of the day. And most of the boycott on Facebook is going to affect, I think, July or the third quarter. Now, there are some people who boycotted who said they'll go through to the end of the year. But there's also some illogicality to it because, Twitter has taken out political advertising. And I know they're worried about hate speech and racism, but there are these platforms that have made very significant financial decisions. Google deciding to nix political advertising, that's a serious impact in terms of ad revenues, and I don't think they get sufficient credit for having done it. Now, that also they may have to go further, and maybe they should go further, because you and I have discussed this before, and I've said to you always, these platforms are media companies; they're not tech companies, and they should be regarded as media companies. And it's no good the platform saying, we're just digital engineers tightening the nuts on our digital pipes whilst the digital content flows through them. They are responsible, just like you're responsible for what you write in your magazine or in your newspapers, they are responsible too. So I think you have to be very, very sort of explicit about that. And I think, again, what people don't understand is that Facebook has shifted its position quite seriously. Hiring 35,000 people to monitor editorial content, is a serious thing to do.
Where does this conversation find you?
I'm in the office. I've been in the office about the last 4 weeks,
right.
Since we've been allowed out. Yeah, but I've been locked down in London. I haven't traveled much. I've traveled to Italy for one weekend, and I'm probably going to go off this weekend. But beyond that, nothing. The performance has been very good. It's been not as good as we wanted before COVID, but we were forecasting 30% growth top line. We did 33 in January. We did 21 in February. We did 6 in March. We did 3 in April. We did 5. We recovered in a little bit in May, and then I can't give you the figure for June, but we recovered even more strongly. So we had a strong June. So we've done very well. The holding companies, Omnicom was down 23% in Q2. Publicis was down 13%. IPG was down 10%. So they're all in pretty desperate shape. We don't know what WPP has done. My guess is they'll be down somewhere 10 to 15%, maybe 15 to 20% in Q2. So it's been pretty dire for the holding companies, but we're not a holding company. We're a tech-led, new age, new era company, more close to Globant than we are to WPP. And you remember that poor old WPP sold their Globant shares, and they missed out on what must be now getting close to $1 billion of value. It's extraordinary, and nobody, Patricio, has said that. Nobody has said that. It's quite amazing. The other thing, of course, is Globant was a great opportunity for WPP because it had the things that WPP didn't have. But anyway, that's water now under the bridge.
What would you do? I know this is hypothetical, but you're still a shareholder and one of the major individual shareholders. What would you do if you were at the helm of WPP, or if you decided to act like an activist investor? What?
Well, it's very simple. I'd break it up.
All right.
There's no purpose anymore. Zero purpose.
And what would be those units? What, because they seem to be concerned.
Well, I know, Ogilvy, Ogilvy on its own. They brought this fellow from Deloitte's back, who from Deloitte Consulting. I'm told he was retiring from Deloitte Consulting. I mean, quite a bizarre decision. But I would have Ogilvy on its own separately, Gray on its own. Y&R is now mixed up with VML, but that as a unit on its own. John Cook running that as an independent unit would be better. Group M, Christian Jewell is very, very good. If he and the management could buy out Group M, or somebody else could come along and help them buy it out, that would be, I think, a good result. So when you look at the value, which is only now £7 billion, when I left it was 16, and I think the value of Group M on its own is worth $10 billion. So effectively, the value that you have in WPP is equivalent to Group M. So I think it's very simple. This is like what happened to the conglomerates about 30, 40 years ago. There was a discount in the stock market for the conglomerates. There's a discount on the holding companies, and the sum of the parts is greater than the whole. So the answer to your question is to break it up.